Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. I am Sarah, 34 years old, living with my husband Daniel in a small house in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. We chose this place for its tranquility and open space. A place where the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the chirping of birds each morning create a perfect picture of life. But what happened last week made me no longer feel safe in my own home. The story began on a Friday morning when the house next door welcomed a new couple. From my kitchen window, I saw them unloading their belongings from the car into the house. They didn't seem particularly remarkable. The woman wore a long dress, her hair partially covering her face, her skin pale. The man was tall and broad-shouldered. Both of them had an unusual demeanor, as if they were quietly observing everything around them. Suddenly their eyes landed on me. I was startled and quickly looked away. Their presence unsettled me, but I brushed off the feeling. They were just tenants, probably introverted people. During the day, the couple remained private. I rarely saw them outside, and when they did, they moved quickly between the car and the house. But at night, everything started to change. Around 10 p.m., while Daniel and I were sitting on the sofa watching a comedy movie, a light from the neighbor's backyard caught my attention. I walked to the living room window and saw candles being lit, forming a perfect circle in the yard. The couple stood within that circle, heads bowed, holding small objects I couldn't make out from afar. I could hear the man's voice, low and continuous, like he was chanting an incantation. The air outside suddenly grew heavy. A chill ran down my spine, and I didn't know what to do. Daniel reassured me, saying they might be performing some kind of spiritual ritual. I had my suspicions about the couple and their ritual, but Daniel advised me not to dwell on it. They're not bothering anyone, so we should respect their privacy. I listened to my husband, returned to the sofa, but I could no longer focus on the movie. The next morning, after the second night, I woke up feeling strangely uneasy. The air in the house felt suffocating. Daniel was still fast asleep, but I couldn't stay in bed any longer. An inexplicable urge pushed me to step outside into the backyard. The early morning air sent a chill over my skin. The dim sunlight reflected off the dewy grass. My feet moved instinctively, scanning the yard. Then, near the fence, something shiny caught the sunlight. It was a silver necklace with an upside-down black pentagram pendant, engraved with strange symbols like ancient runes. I had never seen anything like it before. The moment I picked it up, an unnatural coldness crept up my spine. I stared at it, a deep sense of unease growing within me. Why was it here? I didn't tell Daniel, partly because I feared he would think I was overreacting, and partly because I didn't even understand what was happening myself. I hid the necklace in my desk drawer, trying to shake off the eerie feeling creeping over me. That night, exhaustion weighed on me in an unusual way, as if my energy had been drained. The moment I closed my eyes, I was pulled into a deep sleep, and then the dreams came. I saw myself standing in the backyard, surrounded by darkness. Candles flickered, forming a circle around me. The couple knelt across from me, their mouths moving in endless murmurs of incomprehensible sounds. The air in the dream was crushing. I wanted to move, to scream, but I couldn't. My legs felt nailed to the ground. My arms hung limply by my sides, my entire body frozen. I jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. For a brief moment, I thought I could hear whispers from somewhere in the house. But then I turned, and my heart nearly stopped when I realized it was Daniel. He was sitting upright in bed, his eyes wide open, staring at something distant. His lips moved, murmuring strange, unintelligible words. I called his name, but he didn't respond. It was as if he wasn't in control of his own body. The next morning, I told Daniel what had happened. but he had no recollection of it at all. He simply laughed and reassured me that I was probably just stressed and imagining things. But for a split second, his eyes held something unfamiliar, both worry and a hint of something else, something hidden, just out of reach. One afternoon, while absent-mindedly glancing through the kitchen window, I saw the neighbor woman standing motionless in her backyard, eyes shut. In her hands, she held a silver necklace identical to the one I had found. Her lips murmured something soft, rhythmic, unsettling. So the necklace wasn't there by accident. It had been deliberately placed in our backyard as a summoning mark to pull me into their ritual. The couple wasn't just performing their ceremony in their own yard. The ritual was seeping into our lives, drawing us in unknowingly. Then came the final night. Footsteps echoed in our backyard. I bolted upright, yanked open the bedroom curtain, and my heart nearly stopped. The couple stood there, in the middle of a burning candle circle, the flickering light casting eerie shadows over their pale faces. They were staring straight at our window, but their eyes were completely white, blank, emotionless, just hollow, soulless voids, but somehow their gaze gripped me, held me captive. I heard the deep murmurs again, but this time, they weren't just sounds. I could feel the words sinking into my mind, creeping through my thoughts like unseen tendrils, forcing me to stare back. I reached for my phone to call the police in, but the moment I did, the lights in the yard went out. When we looked again, the couple was gone. An eerie silence filled the night. From that moment on, we couldn't sleep. The stillness of the night, the weight of dread, it consumed us. I felt weaker with each passing day, as if my energy was being drained every night. Strange bruises appeared on my arms and legs without explanation. Daniel began sleepwalking. I woke up one night to find him standing in the living room, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I called his name, he turned to look at me, with eyes that were no longer his. One morning, Daniel stepped outside to check the yard. He came back inside, face pale, holding a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I took it from him, unfolding it to read. The message was scrawled in black ink. "Thank you for participating." A cold dread settled deep into my bones. I felt as if something unseen had wrapped itself around us. Daniel's expression was one of sheer terror. We couldn't stay there any longer. We packed our things and left the house immediately. But just before we left, I opened the drawer to take another look at the necklace, and that's when I froze. Next to it lay an old, yellowed photograph. In the picture was a group of people dressed in black robes, standing in a circle, each of them wearing the exact same silver necklace. But what shocked me most was Daniel standing between them, right next to the neighboring couple, with a mysterious smile. My name is Lily, and the story I'm about to tell took place when I was 10 years old. My family moved to a remote countryside area in Montana when my father got a new job. Our house was quite small, made of wood, nestled between rolling hills and endless stretches of pine forests. The landscape here was very peaceful, to the point where sometimes I felt completely isolated from the world. My father was a carpenter. He often spent hours in his workshop, making tables and chairs that he was very proud of. My mother stayed at home as a housewife and took care of the family. There weren't many neighbors around our home and no one my age, so I spent most of my time either playing alone in the backyard or reading books in my room. I loved the sense of freedom here, but at times, the solitude made me feel uneasy. About half a mile from our house stood the old house of Mr. Howard, with peeling paint and a sagging porch. He was elderly and lived alone. People around here said he used to be a soldier, but ever since returning from the war, he lived in isolation, rarely interacting with anyone. Mr. Howard would often stand by the gate, staring at me when I came home from school, his deep-set eyes sending shivers down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was just his odd habit. Everyone in the village avoided him, and I wasn't an exception. One afternoon, As I was walking home from school, I had the feeling that someone was watching me from afar. I slowly turned around to check and was startled to see Mr. Howard standing on his porch, staring intently at me. I greeted him, keeping the proper respect for an elder, then walked away faster. When I looked back, thinking I'd gone far enough, I was shocked to see Mr. Howard still standing there, eyes never leaving me. A faint smile on his face made me want to run, but also made me curious. That evening, it was quite late, and I didn't want to sleep because I was engrossed in a new toy my father had given me that afternoon. Suddenly, I noticed the flashlight light flashing through my bedroom window. At first, I thought it was just a car's headlights or someone's flashlight, but my room was on the second floor, and the light always came from a specific spot outside the pine forest, repeating several times. I covered myself with the blanket, tightly closed my eyes, and hummed a familiar tune I often sang whenever I felt anxious, then eventually fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, I didn't tell my parents, maybe because I was used to dealing with things on my own after being alone for so long. One late afternoon, while playing in the backyard, I happened to see Mr. Howard standing near the forest behind our house, holding something shiny in the sunlight. He kept waving the object in his hand, muttering angry curses and scolding. I stared for a few seconds, then suddenly realized that it was a blade, the sunlight reflecting sharply on its metal surface. A sudden chill ran through me. I quickly ran into the house and locked the door. My heart pounded in my chest, but curiosity still lingered, so I peeked through the window to see if Mr. Howard had left. My mother noticed my strange behavior and asked if something had happened. I was about to tell her, but then I shook my head and smiled weakly. I was afraid she wouldn't believe me and would think I was imagining things. That evening, the light didn't just flash through the window, but lingered longer. I quickly pulled the blanket over my body, trying to control my breathing. My heart raced, and I couldn't bring myself to stand up and look. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I was about to call my parents when the light suddenly went out, and everything returned to the eerie silence. It took me a long time to fall asleep, my eyes heavy. The next morning, my father discovered strange footprints near the window while cleaning the backyard. The footprints were large, with mud clearly left from the forest. My mother mentioned that she had also heard footsteps the previous night. Immediately, I told my parents about the 2 times the light had flashed into my room through the window. I burst into tears, my 10-year-old strength having reached its limit. From that day on, I could feel the tension quietly spreading throughout the family, like a small flame smoldering. That night it rained heavily, and the wind howled through the cracks in the doors, with tree branches scraping against the window like eerie whispers. I tried to focus on my book to forget everything, but then a soft knock came from the window. I froze for a few seconds, then trembling, I went over and drew back the curtains, only to be stunned. Mr. Howard was standing on a ladder, his face so close that I could see every wrinkle. He knocked again, and with his other hand, pointed to the door. His lips moved as though he wanted to say something, but I couldn't hear anything. I screamed and ran straight to my parents' room, incoherently pointing toward the room, tears streaming down my face. My father grabbed the shotgun and rushed to my room, while my mother called the police. Even though my mother held me tightly, a coldness still enveloped my body. When the police arrived, they didn't find Mr. Howard, but they discovered a ladder and a flashlight left near the window. The footprints led deep into the forest and then disappeared, possibly erased by the heavy rain. The next morning, the police came to Mr. Howard's house. The front door was unlocked and the inside was messy, filled with old items. On the old sofa, Mr. Howard's body was found, still drenched from the rain. His face was covered by his disheveled hair, and his eyes were still wide open, staring at something tightly clutched in his hand. It was a photo of a little girl who looked very much like me, standing in the middle of a field of flowers, her eyes shining with happiness. The police continued their investigation, and discovered that the girl in the photo was Mr. Howard's daughter. She had passed away many years ago in an accident on a stormy night when he was still serving in the military. Mr. Howard couldn't overcome the shock of losing his daughter. Perhaps when he saw me, he mistook me for his daughter. His many stares were actually him keeping watch, and the flashlight shining through the window was his way of trying to protect his little girl from some danger. In his journal, the police found a scrawled note: "Be careful, don't let them take you." One evening, I ran into the backyard to retrieve a toy I had dropped. Suddenly, from the direction of the forest, I saw the faint light of a flashlight flash and then disappear quickly. My heart pounded in my chest, and I stood frozen, unable to take my eyes off the spot. A chilling, indescribable feeling of unease engulfed me. Since then, the flashlight beam has always been a haunting presence for me. Every time I see a flicker of light in the dark, I remember that moment, and the fear rushes back. Now, as an adult, I look back at everything and wonder, could the flashlight that shone into my room that night not have been Mr. Howard? Maybe he was just trying to protect me from some other danger. I'm just thankful that my family is still safe to this day. I was Wade, 8 years old back then, living in a small neighborhood in the suburbs somewhere in the U.S. It was just me and my mom, just the two of us. Mom always took great care of me, cooked tasty meals, told me bedtime stories every night without fail. Life was simple and peaceful, and honestly, it always made me feel safe. That day, it was one of those scorching hot summer days. I had a fever, so I had to stay home from school. First time ever being home alone. The afternoon sunlight came through the living room window, leaving these cool, shimmering patches of light on the wooden floor. The place was so quiet you could literally hear the clock ticking on the wall. I was feeling kind of worn out, but still pretty chill, just lying on the sofa, flipping through my favorite comic book. And then, out of nowhere, there was a knock at the door. I cracked it open a bit and peeked outside. Standing there was Tim, 6 years older than me and from the same neighborhood. Tim was tall, with these wide, innocent eyes and a soft, easygoing smile. He had some developmental challenges, but he was always the guy who'd help out mowing lawns, grabbing mail from the post office, stuff like that. Tim gave me this warm smile and said he knew I was home alone, so he wanted to help keep watch and make sure I was safe. I didn't know what to say. Tim had never hurt anyone, but knowing he figured out I was home alone made me feel off. I mumbled a quick thanks and told him I was okay. He stood there for a second, still smiling like always, then turned around and walked away. I shut the door and tried to brush off that weird feeling. But when I went back to the sofa, I just couldn't relax the way I did before. A few seconds later, I heard this clanking sound coming from the kitchen. My heart started racing. It wasn't a branch tapping the window or the wind whistling through the door. It sounded more like a drawer being opened. I sat up, holding my breath, eyes locked on the kitchen. Then came another noise, a sharp, metallic clang. By then I knew for sure someone was in the house. My mind went completely blank. First time being home alone, and I had no clue what to do. The only thought running through my head was, get away from this. I took a deep breath, then tiptoed upstairs to my mom's bedroom. The big wardrobe in the corner of the room seemed like the perfect hiding spot. Inside, it was pitch dark, except for a thin sliver of light slipping through the crack of the creaky wooden door. Footsteps echoed on the wooden floor downstairs. Someone was moving around. A few minutes later, the footsteps started climbing the stairs, slow, steady, deliberate. I counted each step, my heart racing faster with every number. When I hit 23, I knew whoever it was had reached the same floor as me. The footsteps kept getting louder, closer. My chest tightened when I heard my mom's bedroom door creak open. Peeking through the crack in the wardrobe, I saw Tim. He was holding a big knife. The familiar, gentle face I knew was gone. Now it looked dull, his eyes wide and restless, like he was desperately searching for something. Tim scanned every corner of the room, eyes darting around, then stopped right in front of my mom's bed. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, wild, empty, like he wasn't really there. This wasn't the Tim I knew. The warm, friendly guy from the neighborhood was gone. What stood there was someone else, cold and terrifying. He started rummaging through everything, then just stood there, frozen in front of the bed. I bit my lip hard, trying not to cry. "Bastards! Trash!" Tim muttered, his voice raspy and broken, like some kind of witch's curse. He swung the knife around, slashing wildly at the air. The fear inside me hit a breaking point, locking my whole body in place. After what felt like forever, Tim gave up, turned around, headed downstairs, and left. But I still couldn't move. Not yet. I don't remember how long I stayed crammed in that closet. It wasn't until I heard my mom calling me from downstairs that I bolted out and collapsed into her arms, sobbing. The police showed up not long after. I told them everything, every little detail I could remember. They spread out and searched the place, and pretty soon they found Tim sitting on the front steps, still holding the knife. They took him down to the station for questioning, and my mom and I went along too. When Tim saw me, he gave me this big, happy smile, said he'd spotted a shadowy figure hanging around the house. He thought it was some stranger trying to break in and hurt me. Said he was just trying to protect me by standing guard. And the knife? That was just for self-defense if the guy showed up. The police checked the whole area, but they didn't find anything weird or out of place. Before leaving, they gave my mom a note reminding us to be extra careful, especially since we didn't have a man around the house. And I should have called an adult right away, no matter what. After the police wrapped things up, Tim turned to me with this big, bright smile. But the way he talked and the way he acted before, it didn't match. And in that moment, looking into his eyes, it hit me. This was the real Tim, the version I never even thought could exist. Only now, as an adult, do I realize it. That whole thing with Tim still sticks with me, makes me wonder if I was just too naive to see it sooner. Were the fears I felt that day actually hidden truths? Even now, after all this time, I still get that cold, sinking feeling whenever those moments come back to me. I'm Anna, and my small family just moved to Columbus, Ohio, about 6 months ago. The 2-story house we bought is in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Everything was perfect for the first 3 months. I set up a cozy workspace in the downstairs den. Mike was settling in well at his new job, and Emma quickly made friends at school. We even got to know most of our neighbors, except for the man living in the house next door. Mike said he'd met him once, a retired chemistry professor named Daniel Lee. He lived alone and preferred his privacy. Then winter came, and with it, a strange feeling. In the afternoons, I started to feel tired. My mind was foggy, and I couldn't focus. Headaches appeared often, starting at my temples and spreading to the back of my head. At first, I figured it was just the lack of sunlight and my body adjusting to the colder weather. I wrote down my symptoms in a journal and tried to change my diet, exercise more, and even take vitamin D supplements, but it didn't seem to help. Then Emma started having morning sickness and trouble sleeping at night. "I think we should take Emma to the doctor," I told Mike. "I think you're just worrying too much, Sarah. We just went through a big move. Our bodies need time to adjust." Maybe Mike was right, but I was still going to keep an eye on everything. I started tracking the times we felt worst, the food we ate, even the weather. After a week, the results showed our symptoms seemed to get worse in the evenings and early mornings. One day, I felt my body suddenly and noticeably exhausted after a visit from our neighbor, Mr. Daniel. Mike thought he was pleasant, but I didn't. His eyes were too intense, his smile fake, and he always found reasons to come over more often. The situation became serious when Emma had a seizure at school. The results came back. Emma didn't have a fever, and all tests showed nothing unusual. We were sent home with advice to monitor her and come back if she had more seizures. After Emma fell asleep, I told Mike, I think there's something in this house making us sick, and Mr. Lee is involved. Mike was surprised. Daniel? He's very friendly. He has a chemistry degree and researches narcotics. I looked him up. So what? That doesn't incriminate him. I've seen him lurking around the house when you're at work, and our symptoms get worse every time he comes over. You're being paranoid. Maybe you should see a therapist. I felt helpless and disappointed after talking to Mike. He insisted on defending a stranger instead of worrying about his wife and daughter. I ordered small surveillance cameras online, placing them on the porch, at the front door, and in the main ventilation room. I also bought an air testing kit and sent samples to a private lab. I started sleeping in Emma's room for her safety. One night, I heard a sound, a soft hiss, like gas escaping. I turned on the light and checked around, but saw nothing. The next morning, I checked the cameras. At 2 a.m., Daniel Lee approached our house, wearing a gas mask and carrying a small device. He moved to Emma's window, but seemed to give up when he noticed the window was tightly closed. I felt nauseous and terrified. I was right. He was poisoning us, but why? I needed more concrete evidence before going to the police. I didn't tell Mike about the video or the samples until I had enough proof. The lab results came back a day later. According to the report, they found traces of methadone and hydrocodone in the air and drinking water samples. Small amounts, but enough to cause the symptoms we were experiencing with prolonged exposure. What should I do now? I couldn't confront Lee alone. I needed Mike to trust me. I waited until Emma was asleep, then sat down with Mike and showed him the video and the lab report. Mike stared at the screen, then at me. There was something in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? We need to call the police. Number not yet. We need more evidence. Mike, he's slowly killing us. I'll talk to Daniel tomorrow. There might be an explanation. Mike's answer confused me even more. Why would he want to talk to the person harming his family? Why not call the police immediately? A horrifying thought suddenly struck me, but I immediately dismissed it. No, Mike couldn't know about this. He couldn't be involved. That night, I couldn't sleep. I rewatched the camera footage again and again, and then I noticed what I had missed. On one of the old videos, there was a figure at the front door at midnight. Not Daniel Lee, but Mike. He was opening the door, as if waiting for someone. I rummaged through Mike's phone when he went to the bathroom the next morning. I found messages between him and Daniel, messages talking about dosage, effects, and leaving no trace. And then I found the reason. When she's gone, I'll have everything, the insurance and freedom. Stick to the plan. Slowly, no one will suspect. I felt like my world collapsed. My husband was trying to kill me. I took screenshots of the messages, backed up the videos to a hard drive that I hid in my bag. I told Mike I was taking Emma to the doctor for further checks. Instead, I drove straight to the police station. They arrested Mike and Daniel that very day. A search of Daniel's house revealed a mini laboratory where he concocted drug mixtures. They found documents on methods of slow poisoning that leave no trace, and a large payment from Mike's secret account. Investigations showed Mike was having an affair and wanted to be free but didn't want to split assets or pay alimony. He met Daniel, a chemist who had been fired for unethical experiments, on an online forum. Together, they planned to slowly poison me, causing symptoms similar to a mental disorder and eventually leading to a seemingly natural death. Mike and Daniel were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated assault. I was granted a restraining order and took Emma away from Columbus to a small coastal town on the shores of Lake Erie, a place where we could start over. It's been 6 months since we left. Emma has recovered both physically and mentally. I'm still healing, still learning to trust again.